What's going on, everybody? All right, it's Wednesday, and that is Q&A day. My favorite episode every week. Although we do have a couple of cool episodes coming up later this week. One is another one of my favorites of the month, which is the Midlife Community Show and Tell. A bunch of you, like a bunch of people, sent in some amazing pickups, their favorite pickups from the month of October, and that will be coming out later this week. But remember, if you have a question that you'd like me to talk about, it may not even just be a question for me and what I think. It might just be a question in general about the hobby, the state of the hobby, where things are at, your thoughts. So don't hesitate. I keep a running list going, and so feel free, don't hesitate. Ask down below in the comments. Just simply type out your question, and I will absolutely give my thoughts and share my thoughts in the upcoming weeks. Now, I had some tough questions this week. Some I'm not sure if I really even have a good answer for, but I certainly give it my best shot. This first question is a really interesting one, and so let's go ahead and take a look at it here.
Hey Greg, happy Wednesday. Do you think there's anything different from the way PSA grades cards compared to SGC? For example, does one company put greater emphasis on centering or surface or corners than the other company? Is PSA then viewed upon as the industry leader over SGC due to the set registry? Because both PSA and SGC have been around a long time. Also, what are your thoughts on a numerical grading scale of 1 through 10 versus just having an A authentic label? To me, it seems sufficient enough, hopefully knowing the card is real. Thanks, Greg.
This is a question that I think we all have. Do the grading companies grade differently? Anecdotally, I know a lot of people feel like SGC is more impacted by the eye appeal of the card. If it's well centered, if it has a clean image, it seems like SGC gives those a little bit of a bonus points. And PSA, it feels like is more of a technical grader. There might be a card that looks really, really nice, but there might be some flaws kind of behind the scenes that maybe don't detract from the eye appeal, but based on how they score things, it brings the grade down. And that's why I think that, and we don't know, right? That's part of the question is what's going on. You know, it's like the Wizard of Oz, what's happening behind the curtain. We don't always know exactly. But we do have some clues. One clue we have is watching some of these reveal videos that other people do, getting our own submissions back. But again, that's just kind of anecdotal. We don't have hard evidence to support that. We have gem rate numbers, you know, what percentage of cards are getting 10s. But even that is tough because that's talking mostly about modern cards and especially ultra modern cards. But we also have some hard evidence data, or at least information. Now, if you go to PSA's website, PSA has every single grade. They have what makes a card a certain grade. What are the characteristics of a PSA 4 or a PSA 5 or a PSA 6? And you can look at that. And based on that, you can get an idea of how your card might come back. Now, if you go to SGC's website, SGC also has a grade by grade. In fact, I think that SGC's is broken down by half grades. And you can see what are the characteristics of a card that gets a 3 versus a 4 versus a 5. So they do have published, and they've had published for a long, long time, what the characteristics are of each different grade. Now, some of the language, you know, if I was an attorney, you know, is a little bit gray area, you know, like some slight fraying at the corner. Like, what's one person's definition of slight? You know, a mild surface issues, light scratches might be apparent. You know, and so that's where the gray area falls. And a lot of it, I think, comes back to probably what sorts of technology are they using? What sorts of magnification are they using? And we don't really have that. You know, we've seen some pictures of graders in their grading process, but we don't actually see that per se. The other thing we don't really have is those are kind of broad guidelines. You know, I am certain, and you know, I don't know for sure because I haven't been there, but I am pretty sure that they have some very, very technical rubrics that say, you know, mark the corners 1 to whatever, and it have a little, you know, perfectly sharp, absolutely no damage, you know, virtually sharp, maybe a slight tiny nick on the corner, and all the way to heavily rounded, you know, and bent and all that kind of stuff. You know, as a teacher, I can tell you that rubrics have to be pretty specific. When you're talking about like standardized tests and things, and you're grading an essay for like the SATs or an AP test or something, they have to be very, very, very specific so that there is a uniformity across the board. And I have no doubt that they both have that. The question is, what does it exactly look like? And as far as I'm aware, none of those things have been shared, and it's probably not been shared because it's sort of like their secret sauce. You know, you can't give away exactly how we grade because then other companies could just duplicate it. And I do, to a certain extent, understand that. But if we look at, like, for example, PSA's grades of, or at least PSA's public description of a 4 to SGC's public description of a 4, when you look at those two on the screen, they look very, very similar. Again, there is some of that language in there that leaves a little bit of a question mark as to what the definition of, you know, light scratching is. Well, again, to some people, any scratching would be light scratching. To some, it would just be as long as it doesn't break the surface, you know. If you go to a PSA 5 versus an SGC 5, this is the first place that I really see a significant difference in how they grade. In SGC's description of what a 5 could be, it talks about a spider wrinkle or a very slight surface wrinkle. But PSA's definition of a 5 does not have any mention of any sort of surface wrinkle or surface issue. That leads me to believe that a line in the sand for PSA is you won't find any sort of creasing or wrinkling, I should say, in a 5. But in SGC, that's still possible. So if you're a person who just can't handle any sort of surface wrinkle, if you're getting a PSA card, that should mean then that you buy a 5 and there's no chance of a wrinkle, but you buy a 4 and there is a chance of a wrinkle. In SGC, if you buy an SGC 5, again, according to what we have on the screen here, it tells me that an SGC 5 could have a surface wrinkle, but there's no mention of that at the next grade, so that's sort of the last place that you would see that. So those little hints and clues, which are hidden in there, do give us some idea. The thing I really like about their centering rules in the descriptions is they're very, very specific. A card needs to be at least 85-15 or 90-10. Like, that's not a gray, there's no gray area there. So if a card is 95-5, it's not at least 90-10, right? So it would not receive a grade this high. Those sorts of very specific black and white descriptions are the most valuable. And so I do think that they do provide us a good amount of information, but I don't think they're ever going to give us the full recipe, just like Colonel Sanders has his locked away, and what the herbs and spices are, and the exact amounts of each isn't going to be something that's going to be made public. I think that's kind of how they feel about how they grade and the technologies, the exact technologies. The issue that I have always had, for me, and this is just me speaking, is these companies have been doing grading since the 90s. And if they've been doing grading since the 90s, if they've done anything new in the grading process, if they're doing anything right now, if they're using any technologies right now that they weren't using in the 90s, then that by definition means today's grades are more strict. And if you ask any grading company, are you grading stricter now than you were before? I think they would all say no, we're not grading any differently. And I do believe that. I do believe that they feel that they're not grading stricter. But if they're using technologies like higher magnification, if they're using any sort of infrared scanning, which they are, if they're using any sort of computerized, software to determine the exact centering, which they are, if they're doing things like that, and they weren't doing things like that in the 90s, then some things could have slipped by then that aren't slipping by now. Now, I think that technology is a good thing, because what technology does is it allows them to be more exact. It allows less things to get missed. More things are caught using that technology. But if you're using it now and you weren't using it then, that means things were slipping through then, which makes those older grades, hypothetically, not as strict as they are now. Now, I've said many times also that just because a card was graded 15 years ago, 20 years ago, 25 years ago, doesn't mean that the grade doesn't hold up. I think some of them do. I think in many cases, many of them do. But there are absolutely some cards that slipped through the cracks back then that wouldn't slip through the cracks now, because I'm pretty certain they're using technologies. They've admitted that they're doing things now that they weren't doing then, that are catching more things. So that's the part that's tough. And what does that mean? Does it mean that the grading thing is all junk? I don't think it means that. I think what it means is that it really comes down to, we have to use the grade as a guide. And I've been saying that for a couple of years now, that the grade is assigned. It's not a noun. It's not a fact. It's not like the date that a certain battle took place in the Civil War. It is a person's opinion. And a person's opinion, just like my opinions that I'm sharing right now, doesn't make them right. It makes them from one person's perspective at that moment in time, with all of the information that they had at that moment in time, what they believe to be the case. And opinions can change because the information that they're provided with and exposed to, it may be different. So grades, I will continue to say, are an opinion. They're the opinion of a grader. And one grader might see things a little bit differently and have a little bit different discretion. There might be technologies that are different. And so that's where I am with grading. When I see a 4, I don't just see a 4. I go, all right, the ballpark of this condition is 4-ish. It might have a wrinkle, regardless if it's SGC or PSA. It might have some slight staining. It might have some rounding corners. All the things that it says that a 4 might have. Doesn't mean they have it. There are 2s that don't have creases or wrinkles. There are 4s that don't have creases or wrinkles. But there shouldn't be 6s that have creases or wrinkles. It's just a ballpark. At the end of the day, You got to find the cards that you think look the best.
If you were going to and able to buy a 1933 Ruth card from the Gowdy set, would you be more likely to buy it from an eBay seller or in person at a card show, for example?
Now, I think most of us are exposed to a lot of cards through auction houses. And it's one of the beauties of the internet is it connects us with more sellers. It connects us with more buyers if you're selling. It exposes us to more opportunities in anything that it is that you're interested in. I mean, it is the greatest resource of information in the history of the world. It's every library in the world combined on steroids is the internet because of the access of information that we have. And so when we live in a region like North Dakota, there might not be a lot of card shows going on in the North Dakota area, whereas if you live in the New Jersey area or the New York area or the Philadelphia or Chicago area, you probably have a fair amount to choose from. And so I like that we have online auction houses, and I like that we have eBay, and those give us opportunities. And grading, like I was just talking about, it gives us some additional information beyond what a picture can give us. Because a picture is a two-dimensional image of an item, and a grade is somebody held it in their hands and went through their rubric and went through their opinions of different characteristics to come up with it falls most in this range for this grade, which tells us something. So for me, though I like auctions, I would much rather see a card with my own eyes, because when you look at a grade like, say it's a 5. Okay, say you have a 5 graded card and you see a picture of it. The first thing I say is, well, if it's an SGC card, maybe it has a wrinkle now, because that's what it said in their description of a 5. But if it's a 6, I know it doesn't have that. But there might be technical factors going on that maybe don't bother me. If I'm a person who's not as worried about centering, or I'm not as worried about corners, or I'm not as worried about surface, or I'm not as worried about print marks, or whatever it is, we all have certain things that kind of get us a little And for me, when I see, for example, a card that's a little diamond cut, like if it's hard to not notice the diamond cut. Some are like a 2 or 3 degrees, and you have to really search to see that it's diamond cut. But a card that's like, you look at it and it's clearly diamond cut, for me, drives me a little crazy. Other people could care less, right? That's something I can see on the image, and that's something I could avoid. But if you're a person who's just adamant against wrinkles and creases, you might not be able to see some of that on an image. So I'm always going to prefer buying a card in person, because I get a 3-dimensional look at the 3-dimensional item. Number 2, unfortunately, there are people that will alter photographs that make it a little bit harder to see things that are maybe there. Whenever I'm buying an expensive card, if it's an SGC or a PSA grade, and it's a somewhat recently graded serial number, I always go to the website and check the cert verification and look at those images first, because those are unaltered images. Those are just scanned in. So if you're buying a card and you go, oh man, this eBay photo looks great, check there too, because it's possible that they did something to add saturation to the color. It's possible that the way they cropped it or the lighting that they used hid something. So I want to buy a 3-dimensional item in person because I get to see it 3-dimensionally. That's always going to be the case. And that's not to mention the fact that if I'm buying a card like this, so you're talking about a 33 Gaudi, there's going to be a lot of tax on that. And I live in an area where my sales tax is like 8.5%. So if I'm buying that card and say I get one for, I don't know, $7,000, the 8.5% of $7,000, that's like $5,500. Or I'm sorry, not that much, $550. So if I buy a $7,000 card at 8.5% tax, I'm pushing $600 in sales tax. Whereas if I buy it in person at a show and the dealer's not going to charge me sales tax, I save 8.5% of the price. And then if you buy it online, then the seller is having to give some over to, the auction house or eBay or whoever it is. It's not free to list stuff. So they're going to probably give me a better deal. So it's always better, in my opinion, to buy it in person. I can't really think of a reason why it would be better to buy it online than it would be in person. It's pretty much always better in person. Plus, then you got to worry about it being shipped, and who knows what's going to happen during the shipping process. So if I have the opportunity to buy the copy I want in person, I'm buying it in person. But because we're exposed to so many, the volume of things online is so much higher, it's more likely I'm going to find the one I want online. But I hope that I find it in person.
What is a Grail card that you haven't got yet?
This is a fun question. Now, everybody's definition of a Grail card is kind of different. I've always thought of a Grail card as a card that I really, really want that I don't think that I'll ever get. That, to me, is like a Grail card. It's like this thing that is always out there that I'd like to come in contact with and I'd like to add, but it's not probably going to happen. And so that makes the question tougher. I mean, I would love to have a 52 Mantle because of what a 52 Mantle means. I'd love to have a Cracker Jack Joe Jackson. I mean, I guess if I were to pick a card from the whole hobby, if I were to pick a singular card that I'd want to have more than the Honus Wagner, more than the 52 Mantle, more than a lot of those other things, I think it would be the 1914 or 15 Cracker Jack Joe Jackson. I don't know, I grew up in an era where Joe Jackson was, you got the natural, you've got 8-Man Out, you got Pete Rose getting banned, which brought a lot of discussion about Joe Jackson in. It's a beautiful card. To me, the most beautiful set of all time are the Cracker Jack cards. So it checks every single box. My dad was a big Mickey Mantle guy, so a big part of me would be like, well, the 52 Mantle would be pretty special too. But those cards are not really realistic for me. Those cards are a different stratosphere than the one in which I live. I'm somewhere near sea level, not near Everest. So, if you're talking Grail cards, that's what I would say would be the Grail card, would be the Cracker Jack Joe Jackson. If we were to talk about cards that I'd really like to have that I don't currently have that are pretty darn expensive, I'd love to have. There are a few Ty Cobb cards I'd love to have. The thought of me having a Ty Cobb card is just like mind blowing to me. It's just like that would be crazy. I would love to have a Ty Cobb card. Which one? There are a few that I like, but because I'm collecting a lot of the T206 guys, I would just assume it probably be one of the T206 ones. I really like those cards. Another card that I think that I'd really like to have is I'd really like to have the Cy Young portrait from the T206 set. That's, to me, that's a really cool card. I could go down. There are a lot of cards I want. So this is another card I'd really like to have, and I think those are possible. The T206 Cobbs or a T206 Cy Young. Those are like, I wouldn't call those Grail cards because I think I could and hopefully will own one of those someday. Another card that is super duper important in my opinion that I'd really, really, really like to have is the 49 leaf Jackie Robinson. I mean, that is just such an important card in a lot of ways. And I would love to be able to have one under my care. So that one's not impossible. So I would say the not impossible cards that I'd like to have would be T206 Ty Cobb, T206 Cy Young, 49 leaf Jackie Robinson. It's not going to happen, but would be really amazing. I would say would probably go into the Cracker Jack Joe Jackson or a 52 Mantle. So that's where those stand. I don't anticipate any of those things happening soon, but you never know. I could win the lot. I'm not going to get a bonus at work. I'm not going to get a big commission check. We don't get many of those sorts of things in my industry. So I'm not going to have money fall from the sky to buy any of those. But if I were able to save, which I'm awful at doing because I get so sidetracked with these other things that I like, that's kind of where I'm at.
Awesome pickup, Greg's. Congrats. Question for a Wednesday video. Are you considering putting out a top 25 or 50 cards in your collection video at the end of the year? Those are some of my favorite to watch, and I know you would do an incredible job presenting it. Anyways, no pressure, and thanks for the content as always.
Now that's a fun question. So let me just, I haven't done that before. I haven't done like my top 25 cards or top 50 cards or whatever. And I know at the end of the year, a lot of channels do that. A lot of channels will show their top like 25 cards or 100 cards or 50 cards or whatever people do. I haven't done that to this point for a couple of reasons. Number one, when I first started the channel, the point of the channel was not to show off my collection. The point of the channel was to find a place to congregate with other collectors to share the enjoyment of the channel. And my questions to all of you on Mondays revolve around that. The Q&A here, which I wish more people would ask questions. And because it's a place to interact. I answer, I'm really pretty good about responding to comments in the videos because I want to interact. My show and tell video from people's pickups over the month, that's going to come out later this week. It revolves around that. My cards under $50 from the previous month that seemed like pretty cool cards revolve around sharing, hey guys, you can buy really cool cards for under $50. It doesn't have to be expensive. I know a lot of us aren't rich like these people that are showing these amazing cards sometimes, but you can get some really cool cards for a very affordable price. That is meant to just kind of expose us to some of those cool cards and maybe see some that we like and go, oh, that is affordable. I didn't realize it was that affordable. Most of what this channel is it really does revolve around trying to do things like that. Even when I do PSA and SGC comparisons and the data analysis that I do, it's to try to make the channel, it's try to make the hobby more fun for anybody who participates. That's what this is supposed to be. And so for a long, long time, I didn't show many of my cards because I didn't think that that was what people would be interested in. So now I show my monthly pickups. If I go to a card show, I'll show what I bought. And I've not done one of those top 25 videos. Now, the other reason I haven't done that is I really don't like doing things that everybody else does. I try to I try to make this channel be a place where the things that I do and the videos that I make are not something that 15 other channels are currently doing, because those other channels in a lot of cases are doing it really well or better than I could do. A lot of these guys know a lot more than me. So when they're talking about cards, they know a lot more about the history of those different sets and things than I do. So why would I talk about the history of those sets and stuff? That's not like something different that I can bring to the table. I also will say that I really enjoy seeing other people's collection. So I think that I will do that this year. I think that I will show probably just my top 25. I mean, when you get into 50 in my collection at my price point, it's not going to be anything crazy special. But I think I will do a top 25 video, and I'll probably do it. I don't know. I mean, it seems like everybody does it in like the end of December, so maybe I'll do it sooner than that. Maybe I'll do it in the next week or two. Because again, at some point, people might just kind of get burned out on those. So maybe I'll do that in the next week or two and just show like my top 25 cards approximately by value, not necessarily by my favorite, but by value, give or take, just kind of ballparking it. And, but yeah, so that's the reason I haven't done it. But I also, like you, really do like seeing those. So I'll go ahead and jump on the bandwagon for that. Again, it's just once a year, and I'll do that here soon.
Great video as always. I have a question for a Wednesday Q&A. A lot of us here have beautiful collections of various different things. I think the common ground in the midlife community is primarily vintage along with some nostalgia mixed in. But someone recently asked about cards from the 1970s into the early 80s and if they'd hold value for his grandson in 20 years. Then it triggered a question. Greg, do you have your cards insured? Do most people? I don't. I live in New York, a fairly safe state from Mother Nature, but you never know. Am I being naive for not having my cards insured? Thank you for your time and happy collecting.
So this question was asked a while ago, and I haven't used it until recently because I don't have a very good answer. I don't have collectibles insurance. I don't have insurance specifically on my cards. Now, first of all, I'll say this. To me, insurance is really designed to prevent catastrophic loss. Like, I'm a person who, like on my homeowner's insurance policy, has a little bit of a higher deductible because I'm not really going to use it unless it's something that's going to really crush me financially. If I have a gate blow down from a windstorm, I'll just fix the gate. I'm not going to call up the insurance company. I have insurance, so if my house floods out, if the roof caves in, something like that. And the same thing with like health insurance. Like, to me, it's not a maintenance plan. It's if you have a major medical event to prevent you from going bankrupt to pay for the care for the major medical event. So my collection is not valuable to the point that it would be catastrophic to me. Now, would I be really sad? I'd be really sad if, my whole collection went up in flames. I would be really sad, but it wouldn't end me financially. So I don't know if I'm a person where my I would need the insurance for it. I also, to be honest with you, I'm kind of naive to this. I don't know. I don't know what my homeowner's insurance covers and doesn't cover. And I hope that somebody who's watching this maybe has a channel and knows the answer to that, and also knows the answer to or has collectible insurance, and can talk about what it covers, what they have, what it costs, what they pay for it, what's the point of it, what's the reasoning that they have it. But for me, I mean, I don't know what my collection's worth. 20, if I include my autographs and everything, maybe 25,000, maybe. So if my collection is worth 25,000, I don't really think that that's all that necessary of having a specific insurance policy for it. And then a lot of the cards that make up, I don't know, 2/3 of that, they sit in a fireproof safe. So I don't know. Should I have it? Maybe. I don't. The other issue I have is I have some friends who have collectibles insurance for their cards, and there have been times where they had some issues where they needed it, and there are so many little wording things in there that you almost need a lawyer to ensure that you're going to get your payback if something were to happen, because it's, well, we'll pay unless this, if this, then that. And it's like, it's kind of this word maze. And, some of us have, heard some of the issues that have come up, like, last year at Strongsville, the issue with Memory Lane, my pal Ash, and some of the cards that were stolen. And my understanding is that isn't always a super smooth process. So I don't have it. I don't have any immediate plans to do it, and I don't really know a lot about it. So again, the reason I waited so long to respond is I don't have anything really good to say. I would say I hope that helps, but I know it doesn't help at all. So I'm sorry. Guys, if you have a question for an upcoming episode, seriously, stop. Just go down in the comments, type out your question. I'd love to add them to the list. I really look forward to these videos. And I always look forward to people, especially who haven't asked a question in the past, like a first-time question person, somebody who's newer to the channel. I love to see new names submitting questions. Not to say that people who have submitted in the past can't submit again. I like that too, but it's just fun to include more people. So don't hesitate, down in the comments below, type out your question. I look forward to them. Thanks.